Hey there guys, Noah here, and welcome back to another reveal update thing. Not sure where I'm going with it, but today we are back with the Revenger reveals, which honestly have been the most hype I have had as a Shadow Paladin player since I found out Luard was coming out in Standard. Like, honestly, this is fucking hype. And so today I'm going to be going over it and also giving you guys my 2 cents on what kind of interesting interactions you can do with this deck, given the fact that this Crest makes Raging Rapdragon absolutely cracked. So let's get into it. So starting off with the actual Crest, which you will attain from the Raging Rapt. Essentially, your limit breaks become limit break 3, or you know, so on and so forth. But essentially, you always have limit break active, which is very important. But more importantly, the limit break ability of your Raging Rapdragon's cost for when you activate it can be paid with retire 3 Revenger Rearguards. And this is the big reason why this deck is going to be fucking cracked. So essentially, we pretty much called it from a while back. You know, Raging Rapt, get 2 force markers when you're on the original of Raging Form Dragon. And then you essentially, this one does not inherit the skills. However, what really matters is because of the fact of how the Crest works, where instead of paying that really wonky cost of Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, retire 2 Rearguards, and then ditch 2 Abyss Dragons, you don't have to worry about that now. You can just retire 3 to get the re-riding shenanigans. And essentially, how Raging Rapt works is at the end of battle, you attack with him. Once you're on him now, essentially, because Limit Break is no longer really a thing, you retire 3, you put him back to G-Zone face up, and then you Superior Stride a Raging Rapdragon from your G-Zone that's face down. And it gets Drive -1. So, essentially, on a worst case scenario, you get 2 Vanguard swings, 2 additional force markers, and you get 5 dry checks. Now, we could combine this with cards like the Dark Blessed Angel and the Darkbond Trumpeter to get more of this attack pattern going. And that's more or less what you're going to be doing, because you don't really have to commit to Counterblast as much as you used to. So now you can actually take in a whole bunch of different support cards. And it's not like that the V-era support wasn't already good. It's just now we can actually combine a lot of this stuff together to make one of the most disgusting restanding Vanguard decks we've had in quite a long time. I think, and you know what's funny too? I remember saying a long time back that Revengers, and specifically Raging Form, was basically a better Overlord in almost every single way. And to an extent, that's kind of accurate. But this is more reminiscent of how broken something like NLK is, just without the guard restrict. Because essentially, you're still having to put stuff, you know, and actually pay for certain skills, except it's on a stride. And when you put double force marker on Van and just go Oonga Boonga, it's gross. Another nice thing is that if you combine certain cards together, you can really, get the multi-attacking off. So if you want to put 1 force marker on Van and then another one on Rear, you can still do that to really good efficiency. And I think really the big question I think a lot of people are probably wondering is, after you go through with this whole huge turn, right, where you do maybe 3 to 4 Vanguard swings potentially depending on what you've got on board, what else do you realistically go into? Well, because as we later on found out, we're getting reprints of not just the Raging Rapt, but we're also getting reprints of Chainray Core Dragon, which was a big one. That and all the other strides from the premium collections and whatnot. For some odd reason, we're getting the GB8 reprinted in this, which I don't agree with, but okay, whatever. But, you know, the reprints are pretty good. This is to be expected. So in case for some odd reason you burn through all of your Raging Rapts, what do you realistically go into? Well, you can go into the Crow Crunch, which has a similar retire cost ability where it's Counterblast 1, retire 2 Rearguards, and then you restand them. Or something along those lines. I forget exactly what the cost is, but the cost is pretty minuscule. You'll be able to get that off pretty easily. But another thing you could really do, and there are 2 routes you could go through. You could go into Chainraker, and Chainraker will copy the skill of your Vanguard. And why is this important? Well, it's very simple, really. Because not only could you do this with, you know, the Raging Form Dragon, but you could also combine this with Raging Reverse, which I've talked about before in past videos. Raging Fall Reverse essentially just sits there and goes burr. It is absolutely disgusting. It's very useful in the Link Joker matchup, because they're going to obviously lock your shit down, and then you could just use that against them. And that's kind of where Chain Wrecker comes into play. However, another option we could do to make it so that way we get even more Vanguard advantage and overall plus is with the Phantom Blaster Abyss Legion. Now, it is a Counterblast 2 and Retire 3, which depending on the matchup, it can kind of look a little dicey, but I think it's definitely doable. And it's specifically because of the fact that we're not really committing as many Counterblasts as much as we used to. And I think that's really the big, takeaway from this, is that because we're not counterblasting as much due to the Crest ability, we can honestly just sit there and not give a shit. Honestly, we're eating good, regardless of which way we go about it. Now, unlike Salome, I think there is really, it's tough to say whether or not that people will realistically tech the V version on top of this, because you technically could search the V version off of the Mar, which searches for the same name as your Vanguard. However, I really wonder if it'll actually be worth it at the end of the day, because I think people are going to want more consistency moreover than anything else. And considering you're already getting 2 force markers without really committing too much from hand to actually go through with it, I think it's going to be generally a lot more consistent of a build overall to just run the original Raging form, instead of trying to run a weird mix of the V version and the original, And that was kind of the big takeaway that I got from this. And one other thing, Raging Wrapped in itself is not a hard once per turn. So at best, if your opponent is dumb enough to give you enough Counterblast to work with, you can honestly sit there and just not give a shit what they're doing. Especially if you went first and you've got enough CB to make yourself last a couple extra turns, or enough to a point where you could just sit there and go, okay, I'm going to attack as much as I possible. I got 3 to 4 Vanguard swings to work with. You're fucking dead. Drop them damn Rolocks, those heal guards, or whatever defensive card you've got in your hand to be able to block this shit, because otherwise you're fucking dead. And keep in mind, most Revengers lists nowadays will most likely run anywhere from 8 to 11 crit or something along those lines, because obviously you have to take into consideration the overtrigger, which, holy shit, this deck is going to be insane. I honestly can't wait to try this out on CFA, because you bet your ass I will be making a deck profile, or at least a preliminary deck profile on this, because I feel like there's a lot of room for experimentation, and because, again, you're not committing as many Counterblast, you're in a much better position to run tech cards like the Raging Fall Dragon Reverse, or the Phantom Blaster Abyss Legion combo. You have a lot of options to work with now, and I think this deck is probably the best one out of all 3. Just from the raw amount of aggression you're going to be able to pull off with this deck. Cecilia was already pretty good in its own right, because of the overall plus and just how much many attacks you could realistically do off the Cecilia Reverse combo. But next week we're also getting the reveals for what's actually coming in the main deck, which is why I haven't actually went ahead and panic buyed yet, because I get the feeling if they're going to reprint anything for this deck in particular, they're going to reprint Mana, which is an 8k Revenger Grade 2, which calls a Grade 1 Revenger out. That I can see them reprinting. But another card I can see them reprinting is the Darkbond Trumpeter, like I previously mentioned. Because I get the feeling that they're going to want you to combo into it from Dark Bless into Dark Bond into whatever the hell else you feel like at that point. So, I don't know. I'm hyped either way. I'm looking forward to this. Let me know in the comment section what you guys think about this, and hopefully I can get out a deck profile pretty soon on this. I'm probably going to need a little bit of time. I need to see what they're actually reprinting first, before I sit down and actually start experimenting with this. Plus, Luard is coming out this week in Standard for English, so I'm going to be focusing on figuring out my build for that. But let me know in the comment section what you guys think. Out of all of these, P Standard deck sets or whatever the hell, which one is your personal favorite? Obviously, for me, it's Revengers. It's my baby. Raging Form, absolutely the GOAT. But let me curious, which ones are you going to be picking up now that all 3 have been actually somewhat revealed? Which, again, we're still waiting on the main deck, which will be next week, but I'm really looking forward to it. So let me know in the comment section what you guys think. And until next time, this is Noah, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye, everyone.